Live. We're live.
Welcome everyone to the Standing Committee meeting of the Durham District School Board, Monday, February the 1st, 2021. The meeting will come to order. I'll begin with the Land Acknowledgement. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the tradition and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nations. I would just like to mention that Trustee Forbes has sent her regrets. We wish her well and a speedy recovery. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Trustee.
Yeah,
Trustee
sorry,
Barrett,
I raised my hand. I was just
trying to bring it up there. Go ahead.
Okay, I would just like some clarification before we approve the agenda, because I'd like to just raise a point of order with regards to 8B on rescinding the board motion. I'd like to be able to understand and clarify how we can go forward with rescinding a motion that we made at board, the potential impact that that may have on a contractual obligation that we have, how that impacts the bylaw that we have with regards to the hiring of the Integrity Commissioner, and then just trying to understand if indeed there is a rescinding of the motion, understanding that it may have, well, it would have to go back to board for approval, and what that has to do, what impact that would have with regards to the board motion that we passed and the potential interference with the contractual obligations that I assume that we then reached out to the hiring of the Integrity Commissioner. So I'm just seeking to understand. I am not opposed to the rescinding. I understand quite well what rescinding of a motion means, but I'm just seeking it in relationship to this one because this has broader connotations with regards to contractual obligations that we passed at the last board. So I'm looking to you, Madam Chair, or others to be able to try and help me understand that and how that, before we pass the agenda, because then we would accept it on the agenda.
I see Trustee Lundquist's hand. Go ahead, Trustee Lundquist.
Thank you. So I would normally agree that it's entirely open to a trustee to bring a motion to rescind something from a previous meeting, but you can't do it if it's moot. I mean, that's what Robert's rules say. And if we have already engaged the new Integrity Commissioner pursuant to the previous motion, I agree that this motion's out of order. There's nothing to be done, essentially.
Thank you, Trustee Lundquist. Perhaps I can add a little to that. Thank you to Trustee Barrett. I understand we have a point of order. I added the matter to the draft agenda as a matter of courtesy to Trustee Crawford. But with Trustee Barrett and Trustee Lundquist having raised a point of order, I will make a ruling on the point of order. I rule that the point of order is well taken. And this is my rationale. The board has appointed the Integrity Commissioner under the board's bylaw number 12, the Trustee Code of Conduct. That appointment has been made and the agreement entered into with the Integrity Commissioner, as mentioned by Trustee Barrett. Those steps have been taken and cannot be undone through a rescission motion. Any matters regarding the appointment of the Integrity Commissioner now must be addressed under the terms of the Code of Conduct and the contract.
So, Madam Chair, just to clarify, you are striking that from the agenda? Is that you're ruling it out of order then, correct? Am I to surmise that?
I'm ruling it out of order and striking that from the agenda. I would now ask for a motion to approve the amended agenda.
May I speak to your point of order, Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Well, your point of order is, of course, completely out of order. This is just a backdoor way of trying to not have a discussion about something that's perfectly in order to have a discussion about. We have gone over these arguments. It's all according to the bylaws. It's all in order. I have done everything that I am supposed to do. I thank you for putting it on the agenda, and the questions that were raised should have been raised when that comes up on the agenda. And those would have been good arguments. So all you've done here, Madam Chair, is suppress all of the concerns that I've raised. And here I'm going to do you a big favor. I'm going to withdraw it. You don't have to deal with it. When somebody else gets the same concerns that I have, they can bring it up. And so for now, I'll just say good night to you all.
Trustee Templeton, did you have your hand up before we proceed?
No, it's good. I was just approving the amended agenda.
Thank you. So I have Trustee Templeton has approved the amended agenda. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Lundquist, thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none. As there are no community presentations this evening, I will call on Director Marsh for the director's update on lockdown and schools. Director Marsh.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair Thatcher. Really pleased to be able to bring you an update in terms of the current status within our schools, understanding that it's such a challenging time for our community in terms of school closures and the pandemic, and offering both remote learning and in-person learning. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the incredible effort of staff across the district in this unprecedented time, and how they continue to strive to really connect and serve our students. This month, we have released a mental health toolkit for staff, which focuses on acknowledging, bridging, and connecting with students in terms of their mental health and well-being. We've also deployed an additional 3,800 devices during this shutdown. As you know, we had a very ambitious and high number of devices already deployed, but we have added an additional 3,800. We did a survey for families because with the expectation of synchronous learning for so many, we know that some households don't have sufficient devices for one-on-one allocation. We have the 7 to 12 Chromebook program, so there our students are well served in terms of having individual Chromebooks. In that survey, we found that there was approximately 2,000 more devices would be required to meet the threshold of one-to-one devices from K to 6 in terms of households that were looking for additional devices. And given the extreme shortage that there is within the province of Ontario, and in fact beyond Ontario in terms of Chromebooks in particular, which is the device that Durham District School Board uses, we're not able to meet the one-to-one ratio. We are, as much as possible, trying to deploy so that there's at least a second device in those households. But again, we do not have sufficient devices at this stage to be able to meet that need. And so our message to schools has been to be flexible in terms of working with families in connecting with the students where that presents itself as a challenge. We've done a lot of PD over the course of this month to try to support the engagement of students and working with staff in terms of innovative practices and new software or other software like gizmos, Jamboards, and other engagement strategies, as well as just focusing on the different instructional strategies required to try to engage students. Teaching remotely and teaching in person are such different set of skills. And we know in particular with our youngest learners, how challenging it is for them in terms of staying engaged. And so working with our staff, we've introduced office hours over the course of this month as well, so that teachers or educators can connect with innovative facilitators just if they're having specific challenges to discuss potential route forward. And so very appreciative of all of the work that staff are doing in terms of their very best during this challenging time. Today, there was an announcement that there would be further federal funding coming to the district. We have just received those memos, and so Associate Director Wright and staff will be analyzing them and bringing more details forward to the trustees in terms of that additional funding. But certainly it will go a long way in terms of trying to provide further stability for our families during this period. Today, the Minister of Education also indicated that in consultation with the Chief Medical Officer of Health, that this Wednesday they would be announcing when they anticipate schools to be returning in terms of offering in-person learning. So we will stay tuned to hear further developments in terms of that information. Want to again just acknowledge and thank families. It is very challenging. We're hearing from parents who are working from home, either as in our staff or others, that it's very challenging trying to be in both worlds, and know that this shutdown takes a toll on individuals, and very much appreciate all the additional effort that people are doing in terms of making it work and being very flexible as we move forward with the best interest of people's well-being and relationships being the foundation of that engagement for our students. So that concludes the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director March. Trustee Lundquist.
Thank you for that update. I just had what I think is a quick question. I presume it's a quick question. So I did read the announcement and I watched it on the news, and it seemed fairly clear to me that the money that was being transferred was earmarked for specific purposes. And I'm just wondering if any of that, and I'm hoping I missed it, but I sadly don't think I did. But I'm wondering if any of that was earmarked to actually decrease class sizes further, particularly because we have increases in new strains and a challenging environment potentially ahead.
So through you, Chair Thatcher, I think that's one of the areas that we want to analyze a little bit further in terms of where there's some flexibility potentially in those funding envelopes, recognizing that we have another transition occurring to the DDSB at home at elementary, and wanting to provide stability in terms of the in-person, and which also translates to class size and all of those pieces. So we want to go through it in greater detail to see where that flexibility is to support that sort of thing.
Director Marsh, I have a question as well. There are some concerns around what has been referred to as lost students, and perhaps we've seen a drop in enrollment in our board. And I'm just wondering, these would be students who've left the program for a number of reasons. And I'm wondering how do we plan to reach these students and provide catch-up programming for them?
Thank you. So one of the things we have spoken about certainly is the gaps in learning. And so we will, like last year, be offering summer learning programming as an example. That was something that was highly subscribed to last year, and you may recall was the launch really of our DDSB at home. That's what inspired the approach to DDSB at home. But in the meantime, we have months ahead of us in terms of potential engagement. And Superintendent Macaulay, I know that you and Superintendent Nevels have been discussing this, and perhaps we'll turn it to you to respond with more detail.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Thatcher. It really is a full team effort right through our front office staff. We know DDSB at home. The clerical team members have been reaching out to connect with families. And then we've got a bridge between student success and our social workers as well that are reaching out. Part of it is really understanding what's going on for the families in terms of the disconnect. As Director Marsh referenced earlier, it might be a device issue, it might be a logistics issue, or there could be something more intensive going on that we can either help with supports or help link to supports. We know that there's just over 1,000 students that have hit a critical threshold in terms of their attendance. And so the teams are working through that. Each student has an individual narrative, and our commitments to reach out to every single one of them. We know that right now we're turning that halfway point in the year between quad 2 and 3 in secondary and that midpoint in elementary. And so it's really, really important that we be reaching out and connecting with our students and their families. So a multi-tiered approach, but really on an individualized basis to understand what's going on for them. And then concurrent to that, we've got some strategies that we're going to be rolling out specific to different cohorts. So we know there's a large group in secondary DDSB at home that we need to pay different attention to, and as well in our early years programs in terms of our year 1 students and how important that start to school is. And so teams such as our speech language pathologists are about to launch a similar strategy to last spring, story time with our speech paths, because we think that's another way of engaging how to get students hooked in to that joy of learning in a manageable way for families. So we're really across the entire team, and I don't know if Superintendent Nevels wants to jump in with anything I've missed, but really looking at what are the specific needs of kind of where they are developmentally along the school year, but really what it comes down to is knowing each of our students and reaching them and making sure we connect the right adults with the right students for the right reason to try and re-engage.
I'll just add, I'm not sure if Superintendent Nevels wants to jump in as well, but this is in addition to the work that Superintendent Negro already launched in terms of those students who initially indicated where we saw an uptake in families choosing to do home learning, homeschooling versus being registered with DDSB. And so you may recall we presented earlier, Superintendent Negro spoke about the work that he was doing for that particular group of students, which is a slightly different group of students than what Superintendent Macaulay was just referencing.
Thank you. Superintendent Nevels?
The only piece I was going to add was our secondary schools have student success structures in place, and they've shifted those structures this year to try to meet the needs of those students. So when we do re-engage them, reconnect with them, we're able to fluidly shift their timetables and use some of those student success structures to look at the courses and their pathways a little bit differently.
Thank you. I'm just going to go to Trustee Barrett.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question, because I asked a similar question at OPSPA last week, so I thought I'd ask it here as well, because there wasn't a definitive answer with regards to what the ministry objective or initiative might be with regards to a comparative analysis. Now that we've almost been out of school on and off for about a year now, is there going to be any sort of comparative analysis that shows kind of where the marks are, the learning is from the cohort that was from in-class learning to a hybrid model to a at-home model, just like on the impact on things like math marks and things like that? I'm not sure if that's in the works, if it's something that's discussed on a code level. Just interested on a comparative analysis.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Thatcher. Trustee Baird, I'm not aware of any provincial work in that regard. And typically with the province, they have relied heavily on EQAO data, typically as their comparator in terms of cohorts and how cohorts are doing. And of course, we haven't had EQAO data during this period. One of the complicating factors of report card grades, especially at elementary, is that it's based on terms. And so when we had that positioning of the March direction where grades would not go down during that shutdown. So what we would really be looking at then is this year's data compared to previous years and looking for patterns of previous years. That is something we've talked about doing at Administrative Council, but we're not there yet because Term 1 report cards, of course, are not yet released. And we're just getting through what would be first semester of regular secondary school. But it is something we're interested in seeing because it's about the future learning and then the gap that occurred because of that. And I think that's where we're going to have to, as we continue to move forward, continue to recognize that we can't take for granted prior knowledge and that we have to do those assessments. That formative piece at the very beginning is going to become more and more key for us to serve these students as they make their way through.
Okay, thank you for that. And just one supplementary, Chair Thatcher, are we keeping attendance records on the engagement, especially at the elementary levels, in the sense of what percentage of students are actually showing up for online? Because I'm just concerned about the ongoing gap of people who are not, for a whole host of reasons, technology, family, whatever issues are, on how many of our students are actually engaged.
Sorry, may I clarify? Are you speaking in terms of the virtual school or
yes,
during the remote periods?
Well, the virtual, I was talking about both because
okay.
I recognize there's some difficulties with, say, JK and SK, and I understand that, but I'm more concerned about our students not fully engaged. And I recognize all the difficulties with that, so.
So we do have attendance records, and the direction does differ depending on where we're at in terms of remote versus in person. So when we shift from in person to remote, for example, if a student is present, but not necessarily present the entire time, that's still counting as a present in terms of the report card data at elementary. And Superintendent Davis, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about elementary DDSB at home. At secondary, attendance is taken by course like it would be normally.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, elementary DDSB at home, we are taking attendance in the same manner as we would as in person. The teachers taking those pieces in terms of the attendance. But as Superintendent Macaulay was saying, if there's a student who is absent, we have a process by which our clerical and our teachers are reaching out to those families to ask the question why and how can we support in terms of that. But the attendance process itself in terms of attendance for the students who are at school and the call out to the families, it's the exact same process as in person.
And the only thing I'll add is we did add some specialized codes during this period of time so that we would be able to analyze the attendance data as we go through it. So that it's clear, for example, if a family has contacted us and they're engaging for partial, but not all, we have a special code for that.
Thank you very much. Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Thatcher. This is a question to Superintendent Macaulay. She made a statement about the attendance threshold. I'm really curious to know, are we concerned about primary students, junior, intermediate, or secondary? Where are our concerns?
Thank you, and through you, Chair Thatcher. We're concerned about all of our students, but there is a couple trends within that data. We do know that we have a cluster of students who began the year in person and then indicated a switch over to virtual in secondary. And we have a bit of a spike in that group as well as our early years cohort. And so we're turning our attention as we sit across all the grades, but really fine tuning our attention in those two areas right now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So moving on to item 7 on the agenda, our DDSB presentation around Black History, the Black History resource, a call on Superintendent Hamid and Superintendent Lazarus.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Thatcher. The report on Ignite Learning via Black History is found on pages 1 through 64 of your package. Black History Month is an opportunity for Canada to recognize the past and present contributions that African Canadians have made and continue to make in education, medicine, art, culture, public service, economic development, politics, and human rights. Tonight, we want to share notable updates to the Black History resource, created and developed last year and spearheaded by Jackie Steer. It is important to note that Black history is a component of CRRP, culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. And by including Black history into classroom lessons, teachers transform the curriculum, thereby providing opportunities to hear voices that might otherwise be excluded. So please join me in welcoming Jackie Steer, Meryl Matthew, and Crystal Bryan, who will highlight this vital resource to support educators and students throughout the year.
Good night, everyone. As you know, February is Black History Month. I'm sorry, is there a problem with the sound?
You should have everybody on mute who isn't presenting. So I see a number of individuals that aren't on mute. That would probably help the process, Jackie.
Okay, thank you. So I'll begin again. Good evening, everyone. As you know, February is Black History Month, and it is my pleasure to be with you here tonight to share information about the updated Black History Month resource and related Black History Month activities in the district. The resource was developed in 2019 and launched last year for Black History Month, and it has been updated this year to reflect some additions to the document. The purpose of the document, sorry, next slide, please. The purpose of the document is to provide educators with resources that will assist them in embodying Black History Month into the curriculum. All students will have the opportunity to learn about the contributions that Black Canadians have made to Canada. Our next slide. And so why do we do this? The work of the Equity Department is grounded in the Ontario Human Rights Code, with a core objective being to promote a sense of well-being and equitable outcomes for all our students. We know that many Black students, or some of our Black students, are underachieving and disengaged. And in order to change that, we need to identify and eliminate barriers to student success. Inclusion in classroom curriculum is one of the many ways in which we do that. These issues are addressed in the Compendium of Action for Black Student Success, as well as CRRP framework, which speaks to high expectations for all our students, and the anti-racism training that is currently taking place throughout the district. The ultimate goal is to ensure that all students have access to a high quality education. Our next slide, please. So the document begins with some suggested Black History Month activities that anyone can engage in. It suggests things like exploring Black music and reading literature by Black authors. And you might ask, well, why would we do that? And I think the reason for that, obviously, is to provide people with an insight into the experiences of Black Canadians. So by listening to Black music and reading Black literature, that exposes us to the lived experiences of our Black Canadians in society. Next. So the resource began when we sent out a request for schools to share with us some of the Black History Month activities that they were engaged in the system. And so all schools responded by sharing with us some of the things that they did. Some were based by grade level, some by subject level, and some were school-wide. We took that information and added to it by including videos, Black History Month websites, Canada Post tributes to famous Black Canadians, as well as some additional resources and articles about famous Black Canadians. Our next slide, please. So the additions to the document in 2021 include the addition of National Film Board documentaries. There were some listed last year, but we've added some more. We've included a list of prominent and trailblazing Black Canadians, politicians, musicians, writers, and sports figures. We've included some recommended books and podcasts that would provide educators with background information on the lived experiences of Black Canadians. We've also added an additional Canada Post tributes to a colored hockey championship team that existed in the Maritimes. And that that hockey league was started by, was started in order to encourage young Black men to join the church. It was seen as a good way to get them involved. And also there's a list of some historic Black Canadian sites in Ontario. I'm going to turn it over to Crystal Bryan now, who's going to speak to some of the, this was the stamp that I was referencing around the colored hockey championship league. And I think that's a little known fact for many Canadians that in fact such a league existed. Our next slide. And here are the list of some of the Black history sites that pre-COVID times, schools were able to take students to visit some of these sites. I believe that for Uncle Tom's Cabin, they do still have a virtual tour in place, and there is information available about some of these historic places, and teachers can contact them via their website to find out additional information. Our next slide. Crystal, I believe that's you.
Yeah. With the start of Black History Month possibly beginning with all students working from home virtually, the administration from the DSAA group came together to discuss plans for Black History Month this year. Most schools shared what they would be, how they'd be making the switch to virtual knowledge building, and a few schools highlighted some of the transformative work that they had been doing throughout the year. At the end of the 2-hour session, we decided, along with consultation from various student leadership groups, it was decided that we would do one activity together and stand united in a social media challenge or campaign. Hence, hashtag Black Excellence DDSB was born. It is a social media challenge where we are asking school leadership groups, administration and staff, as well as individual students to post to one of their school's established social media platforms or to their own with the celebration of highlighting a Canadian Black figure during February. Our prompting guides for posts center around 4 categories. Did you know? Black leaders or activists, where are they now? And talented teens. We feel that although this is a performative campaign, it is an opportunity to engage our entire secondary DDSB community in some general knowledge building about significant Canadian Black figures, as well as possibly seeing themselves or their peers highlighted throughout the month. At the end of each week, we will highlight some of the significant posts with a shout out or a repost. So be sure to check your social media, folks. Next slide.
Thanks, Crystal. And so earlier on in the presentation, I did reference the CRRP wheel, and here it is. And as I said previously, much of our work is centered around this particular framework. And one of the things that is mentioned is having a curriculum that reflects the students that it's being shared with, as well as having high expectations for all of our students. The work in the document is closely aligned with Durham priorities, specifically those of success, engagement, well-being, and equity. So again, it is our hope that Black history will be embedded in the curriculum so that students will see themselves reflected in the curriculum and understand that Black Canadians have contributed to the development of Canadian of Canada as a country, and that those contributions are recognized and valued. It is my belief that all students benefit from an accurate and inclusive portrayal of Black history. So the intent is not just for Black students, but for all students. So in Durham, we're proud of the fact that we have 3 elementary schools in the district that are named after trailblazing Black Canadians. The schools are Lincoln Alexander, Michael Jean, and Viola Desmond. And so last year, during Black History Month, we created a video that featured students from those schools shared with us how they were inspired by the individual that their school was named after. So I'm going to ask Merrill if he wouldn't mind showing us that video right now. Tripping over my words tonight. While Merrill's getting that together, I'm just going to share with you a quote from Jean Augustine, who should be recognized as the person that led to the implementation of Black History Month in Canada. So Jean Augustine said, I was an educator. I recognized that the classroom curriculum was saying very little about African Canadians. The same thing was done to Indigenous peoples. If there was any reference, it was either in the footnote or as a sideline. Black Canadians were not part of the script and were not shown contributing to Canadian society.
There's like a lot of diversity in the students at Lincoln Alexander Public School, and knowing that we're named after a famous Black Canadian, it shows that we have strength in our diversity and that we can all achieve our goals.
It tells me I can do what I need to do or what I want to do. It makes me feel like I have the right to education.
It's important to have schools named after Black figures because it raises the awareness that it doesn't matter what color you are, you can do anything you put your mind to. Well, Lincoln Alexander has always been a role model for me and inspires me to do great things, like how he was the first Black member of Parliament. He's always been up there with his quote for me, which is not your duty to be average, but your duty to set a higher example.
We're really proud to call Lincoln Alexander our home because of all the accomplishments that he himself did.
Having our school named after Viola Desmond helped me recognize her deeds and follow her footsteps, because what she did was really great. Knowing that she was a Black Canadian and she stopped segregation is incredible.
She inspires me to be open and kind. She also reminds me to ask myself every day, what am I here for? And I keep on telling myself I'm here for Viola Desmond, to do it the Desmond way and to help other people through the day.
It's important for a community to name our school after Viola Desmond because while Desmond was a public role model, she was a figure to many people all around the world. She did something that no one thought a Black woman could do. So I think that putting her name as the name of the school will inspire a lot of people to stand up and fight for their right even when no one's standing with them. I think it's important that our school is named Michael Jean Public School because someone who is not only a Black person, but who is also a woman that has such a high position in the government really shows that any racial walls put up in the past have really been shattered.
Because it's named after a person who helped other people, and so she's kind of like an influence for us as the youth.
It has an impact on the books we have in our library because we have many books about Michael Jean in our library, and we also have a photo of her, so when people walk by they don't just see
our mascot. They actually see a photo of her, and some people might want to read up about her because they might be wondering what she's doing in her school. I think it's important that our school is named after her because most people in politics have been white men, and her being a strong Black woman, she has broken barriers and shown people that anything is possible.
Thank you for the opportunity of allowing us to share this resource and these activities with you tonight.
You're on mute, Chair Thatcher.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Jackie and Crystal. We'll just see if we have any comments or questions from the trustees, and we'll start with Trustee Barnes.
Thank you very much. I really love that presentation. I like the fact that it's so Canadian centric, that we are starting to really look at the contributions of Canadians in opposed to the American portion of it. So that's really nice. I wondered how much uptake we had on, are we tracking at all how much uptake we had on the uses of the document last time? And I was also pretty blown away by some of the activities that were reported from our different schools that they were already participating in for Black History Month. So I thought that was very, very inspirational to see that our schools are doing things beyond just putting up pictures, and the depth by grade was also pretty good. So thank you very much for that. And I loved the video as well and those are all my schools.
Thank you, Trustee Barnes.
That's awesome. It was good to see. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we are beginning to this year, we are partnering with accountability and assessment and accountability, sorry, to collect that data of how teachers are using it and when they're using it, because we want to certainly allow them to recognize that it's not just to be used in February, but throughout the year. So we will bring that data back for you next year.
Thank you very much. It's always good when Trustee Barnes is blown away by a presentation. So item 8 on the agenda, I'll call on Chair Morton to talk about the naming of schools policy. Chair Morton.
Thank you. And through you, Chair Thatcher. The Durham District School Board is in a very fortunate position in that we are a growing board, and there are indications that we will continue to thrive. Durham is a great place to live, to grow, and to learn. We will be opening new schools in Ajax and Whitby in September. We also see other new school openings on the horizon. The naming of schools is an important decision that has a lasting impact on the school community. With the recent news involving the name of one of our schools, it is critical that we consider our policies around the naming of schools before new committees are created to name these new schools. It's also important that the board ensures that we have a policy that reflects the importance that schools play in their local community. Community voice is an important part of any school naming decision by the board. This is a discussion that should take place within local school communities, and our policy should allow for a robust discussion when naming a school so that we consider everyone's voice. I'm suggesting then that this would be an opportune time for us to revisit the policy around renaming new schools. Therefore, I bring forward the following motion: that the board direct the Director of Education to bring forward a proposed revised draft policy on the naming of schools to the board meeting in March 2021. That is my motion.
Yes, I'm just wondering, Kathy, were you able to get that motion?
Yes.
Would you read that back for us? Thank you.
The motion is that the board direct the Director of Education to bring forward a proposed revised draft policy on the naming of schools to the board meeting in March 2021.
Okay, thank you. I'll call on Trustee Lundquist. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to speak to the motion.
Just point of order. We don't have
It
a
needs to be
second.
seconded first.
Yes, we don't have a, sorry. Just being
I thought
a
Patrice was
pain.
going to second it, so
Yeah, sorry. I knew where you were going.
Yeah.
We're in committee, Trustee Barrett.
We have I know, but we have a tradition of having motions seconded standing. So I'm just saying that we should just continue with the
All right.
premise. That's all. It's seconded now. I believe Patrice has. So
Patrice
I'll
has seconded the motion.
Yeah, I'll move on.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion on the table from Trustee Morton, seconded by Trustee Barnes. Sorry for the interruption, Trustee Lundquist.
No problem at all. Process-wise, it made perfect sense to me, really. So I just wanted to speak to this for two reasons. One is, you know, obviously the media around the school in Whitby in particular is part of what's driving this. But I think it's really important that we recognize that this isn't really just about one school, that we have other schools named after historical male figures who have certainly done things, you know, that are historically problematic. And so I think it's important that we take a broad view of this, so it's not a specific issue, although I think that issue is going to need to be addressed. I also think it's really important that the school communities where this could impact the names of the schools be consulted, because I've been following a bit of the discussion on one of the social media pages of the school, and there are strong feelings about it both ways. I'm not prepared to, you know, share a view of it for myself right now, but I do think that if we're going to be passing this, and I would support it, obviously, I'm just hopeful that we will really take a look at this in a much broader way so that we can address longstanding problems, including schools named after people who have engaged in systemic racism and genocide.
Thank you, Trustee Lundquist. Trustee Barrett. Oh, I apologize. Trustee Barnes had her hand up first. Do you mind, Trustee Barrett? I'll just go back. Go ahead, Trustee Barnes.
Thank you. I support Trustee Lundquist in the discussion about it being a broad policy and not just about one specific school. And I think the policy also needs to probably have a piece where we address something that comes up like this. So something that is in place, that there's a process by which if we have a school and there's a problem, what's the process to address that? So I think that would be an important piece to add in there as well.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Barrett?
Thank you. I don't disagree with the motion with regards to wanting to be able to re-examine. However, in the past, when we have re-examined this, we have had a committee of both trustees and staff. So I'm a little concerned about not having the other voice of the community, us as the elected representatives of our communities, also being on that committee. Now, I know the last thing we want is a committee of 22 people. And, but I think that the voice of trustees is an important element when we have revised this. And I think we've all sat on that committee on a number of occasions. There has been the voice of trustees as the voice of community. So I might suggest that we need some broader representation, just not a staff report. The second piece is, and I think it plays into the piece that we just listened to a video where it was very, very important about ensuring that there is equity in the naming of our schools and the pride and the inspiration that brings forward. So those things are going to have to be taken into consideration as well. I understand Trustee Lundquist's piece, and sometimes I think it'd just be easier not to name schools after people. However, it sometimes also then has a point of being able to not necessarily have equity and representation in what schools are named, etc. So I'm just suggesting that we should probably have maybe 2 or 3 trustees work with staff along this. I don't think we need every single trustee on the committee. I think it's got to be much smaller, but I think it would behoove us to be able to have either a cat or some trustee a couple of trustees on this committee that comes forward with recommendations, as we have that we represent our community as well. Thanks.
Trustee Barrett, am I understanding, are you amending the motion?
Well, I guess I would like to hear what others think, because if it isn't the will, then you know, I have no objections to staff bringing recommendations. That's not the issue. It's just that I think that this has a broader connotation in the sense of the representation of our broader community as well.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table then, directing the Director of Education to bring forward a proposal from staff around our policy for the naming of new schools to be brought by March 2021. So just looking for additional comments from trustees. Trustee Edwards.
I keep on putting my hand up and it disappears after people talk for a bit of time. We were told it was 10 seconds and my hand keeps on going down. So I don't know if you caught it, but I've tried to speak on a couple of items. So just so you know, but I agree with a couple of things, you know, and I had written that down since we had just heard students talk about the importance of the naming of schools. There's that aspect. I agree that trustees, some of the trustees should also be part of that committee. We are responsible for policy. We do represent our communities, and I'm sure every trustee around here has been hearing input or comments on basically around school naming. There's and provincially, there's other boards that are dealing with it as well. So I think it's really important that trustees are part of that discussion, and that we look at it all. And Patrice Barnes talked about, Trustee Barnes talked about a policy as far as looking at different situations. And I think it more is that we really don't deal with renaming, because there's going to be an opportunity, and we have done it where we've amalgamated or schools and so forth, where you possibly rename because it reflects the community. So I think we have to deal with, include the thing as renaming, because it could be just the community has changed significantly and who they represent, that they might feel that it's time to change it. And then it will also deal with, who knows, when we name a school after a person, what will happen in the future as far as that's concerned and what comes up. So I think really it's a policy around naming, but also renaming of schools, and when do we follow that?
Thank you, Trustee Edwards. Trustee Lundquist, go to Trustee Templeton, if you don't mind, because he hasn't spoken yet, and then to Trustee Stone, and then back to you. Go ahead, Trustee Templeton.
Thank you, Trustee or Chair Thatcher. I do agree with Michael Barrett, Nikki Lundquist, Trustee Barnes. I do believe that we do need representation, not 11 people, obviously, but a couple of people with staff to come up with the ideas. I know at the end for naming and renaming schools, we're going to hear back from the community, especially with ongoing now. And I think their input is very important. So I would suggest a community member, maybe from the parent involvement committee, but that would totally be up to staff. But I do believe that a couple trustees sitting on this committee be worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Templeton. Trustee Stone?
Just quickly, just in agreement with the other trustees with regard to having trustees on that committee as well. And I just noticed the policies that we were sent does include the renaming of schools. So I think that's important to make sure that we have a policy around that. And the vetting process. I don't know if we can come up with a really, really good vetting process, or maybe naming schools posthumously or something like that. But however, we'll figure that out on a committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Stone. Director Marsh, I'll just go to Trustee Lundquist and then I'll come to you. Go ahead, Trustee Lundquist.
I'm content to have you go to Director Marsh because I actually was going to propose an amendment to the motion, and I think she might have something to say before I do that that might circumvent the need to do that.
Let's go to Director Marsh. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Chair Thatcher. Just wanted to clarify then in terms of the intent, because typically when you think about the committee would be, for example, once it comes either from trustee direction or school council direction, when we're thinking about renaming in particular, because that is a sensitive issue, that there would most definitely be a committee where there's parents, students, staff, and trustees in terms of doing that work. In relation to policy development, it's not typical per se that we would have a committee for policy writing to bring forward to standing for discussion. So I just wanted to clarify, because there was some reference about then including PIC members and whatnot in the actual draft policy. We would bring the draft policy forward, seek input and feedback via standing committee, and do consultation then broadly throughout the district in terms of school council, SCCs, and PIC on that draft policy. So if you're looking for something more elaborate in terms of some policy development that looks different because of the nature of it, I would then ask that it may not be feasible, the timelines that you've identified, because of course, availability and getting people together and whatnot, to bring forward a draft policy for March standing for discussion and then consultation, to then bring it back in time for community presentations and then passing at the April board might serve to be a challenge for us if the intent of the trustees is to have a much broader committee in terms of just drafting the policy versus draft policy coming forward to standing committee and then broader consultation with community members. That would include all school councils.
Thank you. Trustee Lundquist?
Thank you. So I'm hearing what Director Marsh is saying, and I appreciate it. And I think the timeline might be a bit of an issue too. But I do think that there is a way we can get to that, which would be to amend this motion. So I'm going to bring a motion to amend it and add that includes a process when renaming is being considered, and that a committee be struck that includes trustees to provide input into the policy.
Would you mind repeating that, Trustee Lundquist?
I will try. I think that the motion can stay, and then I would amend it to addition, make an addition that says that includes a process when renaming a school is being considered, and that a committee be struck that include trustees to provide input into the policy. And I recognize that public consultation and all of that needs to happen. I just don't know that it needs to happen here. It's just a matter of where. I'm just hoping that that kind of captures the concerns.
Thank you. So, Kathy, I'm wondering if you were able to to receive all of that motion?
I think I got it. I have to add, to amend, to add to the motion that includes a process when renaming a school is considered, and that a committee be struck that includes trustee input into the policy.
I think you have it. Thank you very much, Kathy. Further discussion? I'll go to Trustee Morton.
I had my hand up first.
Oh, all right. I'll go to Trustee Barrett first and then to Trustee Morton.
Because I'll yield when I'm not first, but won't yield when I'm second. So anyway, I'm just wondering to your motion, Trustee Lundquist, if the intent was to obviously have that consultation take place with the trustees prior to coming to the Board of Trustees. Yes. So I'm just was going to suggest something, because I recognize that if the chair puts out a call for representation, she could end up with 10 or 11 members on this committee, which may not be what we're looking for. I was just going to see if maybe you could limit it to 3 trustees from different geographical areas in order at least to be able to put some framework around it. Or we could have 10 trustees, and I don't think that might slow things down a little bit. So that was just what I was going to suggest.
So were you going to amend the amended motion, Trustee Barrett?
Well, technically the motion's on the floor. It has to be seconded for me to be able to amend it. But since it hasn't been seconded, it could be altered prior to being able to second it, and then I don't have to amend it to get the amendment through the amendment.
I'm content to alter it.
That's why I was looking to you, Trustee Lundquist. So
okay. So go ahead, Trustee Lundquist.
Okay, I think I've captured in my head what Trustee Bear has said. So so it would be a committee be struck that includes at least 3 trustees from different geographical, I don't know what we call them. Right. They're not ridings. I don't know what you call them. Different.
Yeah, I was going to say areas, but it's not
different
really
municipalities.
Areas. Different municipalities. Yes, we'll go with that.
To provide input into the policy before the policy. I think you were saying before the policy comes before the standing committee.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm sure we can find a way to put 10 more sentences in there.
So at least 3, it includes at least 3 trustees.
No, not at least, just 3.
Sorry, 3 trustees, 1 from each. 3. No. 3 trustees, 1
from different municipalities.
From different municipalities.
That's it. Thank you. From different municipalities before the policy comes before the standing committee.
To provide input into the policy before the policy comes before the standing committee.
To provide input into the policy before the policy comes before the standing committee. All right. Kathy, I'm just wondering if you could read the entire motion.
Yes. To amend the motion, to add to the motion that includes a process when renaming is considered, and that a committee be struck that includes 3 trustees from different municipalities to put input into the policy before the policy comes before the standing committee.
All right. Kathy, would you like me to ask Trustee Morton to repeat the first part of the motion?
Sure, that would be great.
All right. Trustee Morton, would you object to repeating the first part of the motion?
I was going to second that motion, Chair Thatcher.
I just wondered, okay, if there's nobody who needs to hear the whole thing from start to finish, Trustee Barrett has seconded the motion. The motion put forward by Trustee Lundquist, seconded by Trustee Barrett. Is there any further discussion? Trustee Morton, I'll come to you, Trustee Edwards.
I just need to have clarification because my original motion dealt with naming a school. We're now talking about renaming a school. And my intention was we have to have the policy about naming a school, and we move from that to renaming a school. So I just need clarification on how we can manage that.
The way that I was, and I just see Nikki's, I was going to speak for you, Nikki. I will not speak for you, Nikki. So, but I was interpreting that to mean that not only is the policy going to include a policy for procedures for naming the school, it would also include a procedure for renaming of a school as well. So it'd be more inclusive. Is that correct, Trustee Lundquist?
Would you like to add to that, Trustee Lundquist? You're muted.
Sorry, I'm very out of practice. So the reason I wanted to include that is because Trustee Barnes raised it, but I also think it actually makes some sense. So if you're renaming a school, you're going to have to name the school, and to separate them just means you're going to have a complexity of policy that isn't necessary in my view. So I actually think, although it's broader, it will eventually streamline the process. You just go to a policy that speaks to all of the naming issues, naming, renaming, etc. So it's my hope that it actually simplifies, not complicates.
Director Marsh.
My point's been covered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion on the table. A motion put forward by Trustee Lundquist. Go ahead, Trustee Edwards.
But I'm a little confused because the first part of the motion, because I thought Michael was approving the amendment, which Nikki proposed, which I agree upon, and which we vote on the amendment, then it's a vote on the initial motion. And I have a little bit of problem that at the very beginning, it says the direct staff to form the committee when we are trustees are really forming the committee with staff. Because I don't know, because it makes, normally that's what happens with committees that we direct to have a committee formed with staff and not the other way around. I don't know, it's a little confusing to me. So the whole motion, I just need the whole motion read out, even though, because it makes it's a little confusing.
Kathy, would you be able to read the motion in its entirety now?
Yes. That the board direct the Director of Education to bring forward a proposed revised draft policy on the naming of schools to the board meeting in March 2021. And the amendment to the motion is to add to the motion that includes a process when renaming is considered, and that a committee be struck that includes 3 trustees from different municipalities to put input into the policy before the policy comes before the standing committee.
Donna, as Trustee Edwards, is that clear?
Well, just a convoluted motion, but yeah, it kind of does it, sort of.
All right. Okay, so we have a trustee on the table. We have a motion on the table from Trustee Lundquist, seconded by Trustee Barrett. Trustee Morton, did you wish to speak?
Yes, my hand is up. I'm wondering if I could simplify things by going back to the original.
You're on mute, Trustee Morton.
Trustee Morton, would you mind beginning again? We lost you partway through.
Sorry. I'm suggesting that maybe we could simplify things by going back to the original motion and saying that the board direct the Director of Education to bring forward a proposed revised draft policy on the naming and the renaming of schools to the board meeting in March. Could we not say naming and renaming? Would that simplify things?
I don't think so, Trustee Morton. I think we're missing a major part of the motion.
Oh, no, but I mean to add on the additional trustee involvement.
All right. Kathy, would you mind just reading that again? And perhaps Trustee Morton will explain. I don't quite understand, Trustee Morton, what you're proposing. So would it be helpful if we had Kathy read that again?
I think Trustee Lundquist has got an idea.
Back to you, Trustee Lundquist.
Thank you. I think that is possible. So I don't object to Trustee Morton's or Chair Morton's vision of that. So it's just, you keep the naming and renaming part, and then you just still include the part that a committee be struck that includes 3 trustees from different municipalities and put into the policy. So I actually think it's less verbose the way she's proposed it, truthfully. So that makes sense to me.
So to change the original motion then to include the naming and renaming of schools, and then to continue with the portion that you put forward, Trustee Lundquist, that a committee be struck to provide input and so on.
Yes.
Three students from and so on. Yes. Okay. Just wondering, Kathy, if you were able to get that changed.
Yes, I think so. Should I read it out?
Please.
That the board direct the Director of Education to bring forward a proposed revised draft policy on the naming and renaming of schools to the board meeting in March 2021, and that a committee be struck that includes 3 trustees from different municipalities to put input into the policy before the policy comes before the standing committee.
All right, thank you. We have a motion on the table. All in favor?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I don't mean to be a stickler, but that is another amendment moved by Trustee Morton, so it has to be seconded because it's amending the amendment. So
thank you.
Sorry, just being a pain.
So we have a motion on the table from Trustee Morton, seconded by Trustee Lundquist. Trustee Stone, your hand is up.
Sorry,
is that with respect to this motion?
Yes, just to clarify, we're now voting on Trustee Morton's amendment to her first motion, but we're not voting on.
You are voting to amend the amendment. So you vote for this amendment if you so choose. It amends the amendment, and then we go back to the original motion to approve that.
Okay, but there's 2 amendments as far as
There's one amendment that was made. It has not been passed yet. So we're amending the amendment. So you're going to vote on the amendment to the amendment that eradicates the original amendment, and then you go back to Trustee Morton's original motion.
Okay.
So first we'll vote on the amendment.
Correct.
All in favor? Can you just give me a show of hands, please? That would be great.
Yeah.
And now opposed? All right, carried. Now we need to vote on the amended motion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone.
Director Marsh has a comment.
Go ahead, Director Marsh.
Just for clarity then, in terms of bringing it forward, we had agreed in governance when we were bringing policy forward that it would first come forward in standing. So this will come forward in draft format for standing committee feedback in March. It would then go to March board in terms of the notice that the policy would be changing. And then April standing would provide an opportunity for any community representation if they wanted to do presentations, and then final approval in April. So just want to clarify, the motion says March, and that is when it would come forward in terms of the formality of notice for April, but the first one would come forward in standing for discussion in March. So just wanted to make sure we laid that out.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. So moving on to item 9 in the agenda, calling on Director Marsh and the senior team. I'm assuming then, Director Marsh, you'll begin. Ignite Learning Implementation Mid-Year Operational Goals Update.
Thank you very much, through you, Chair Thatcher. We're very pleased to be bringing forward to you on pages 65 to 96, the update on the operational goals for this year, recognizing that staff, this work reflects the efforts of staff throughout the district in moving forward the pillars of the strategic plan. Throughout the pandemic, staff have evaluated work within the context of serving immediate needs while continuing to be forward-thinking in terms of students' long-term success and well-being. For that reason, equity, well-being, and success have been the foundation for us to innovate, engage, and lead since September. We've striven to focus on anti-oppressive practices and implementation of the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Each action item within the mid-year operational update has been evaluated in terms of the progression we've made in it, understanding that under each goal, there's a multi-pronged strategy of many different action items. Tonight, we're very proud to highlight 4 trustees, some of the work that we've been doing in terms of presentation from senior staff in a verbal form, and then there's much more content within the report that can be found in your package. So I'm really pleased now to turn it over, and I believe success is beginning the way with Superintendent Nevels.
Thank you. Ontario's vision for de-streaming is to address policies and practices that negatively impact students so that all students are prepared for senior program and secondary school, have equity of access to pursue any post-secondary pathway they choose, and to be successful in their future career. Within the DDSB, we continue to work towards preparing staff, students, and parents for the shift in practice to de-streaming, and preparing learners to implement the ministry's soon-to-be related strategic framework for de-streaming. As part of our professional development opportunities, we continue to focus on differentiated instruction and universal design for learning for all students, including those with learning disabilities, and focusing on pedagogical and assessment practices to include connections to global competencies and new and revised school planning to support student achievement and well-being.
The Student Achievement and Curriculum Department is providing a range of professional learning resources and sessions to build system familiarity with the new Mathematics 2020 curriculum. There are several significant changes in this curriculum, including newly added strands of social emotional learning and financial literacy. In addition, coding is now found in all grades from 1 to 8. While we are in the beginning phases of implementation with this new curriculum, several successful strategies have been noted. One of these successful strategies has been the centrally developed professional learning sessions being used by school administrators within monthly staff meetings. At present, there are 7 modules available and with more under development. As the year has progressed, more elementary school administrators have accessed and used these sessions with their staff. At this time, at least half of all elementary schools have used at least one session, and some schools have used multiple sessions across monthly staff meetings. Anecdotal administrator feedback on these sessions has been highly positive, with comments such as, "I just wanted to let you know that these admin resources are wonderful and so appreciated. I'm going to be using the long-range plan slides tomorrow at our staff meeting and can't wait to delve into the coding as well. Merci from an overwhelmed new VP who truly appreciates everything you and your team does to bring the curriculum to life. The available topics include human rights and equity in mathematics, top 10 key changes in new curriculum, introduction to social emotional learning, best practices for math long-range planning in 2 parts, coding skills, and assessment and evaluation. The literacy and numeracy facilitators continue to support school teams with their assigned family of schools. This support for the new curriculum has included co-planning lessons and learning clusters with educators, providing recommendations for math resources, and facilitating professional learning sessions, including a strong focus on math, digital tools, and resources. We've spent a lot of time working with DDSB at home to help them be the best online teachers they can as well. The number of requests for this school-based support continues to grow. These strategies, along with additionally centrally developed workshops and on-demand videos and teaching resources, will continue to support this key initiative.
There is much work left to do. Significant progress has been made this year towards improving key service areas with a focus on staff satisfaction and well-being. The district has engaged with staff, labor partners, and affinity chairs on a number of occasions to share the findings of the cultural practices review and to discuss next steps. Additionally, Human Resources Services has begun reviewing their internal processes in an effort to improve efficiencies and staff service.
The former Safe Schools Department, excuse me, the former Safe Schools Department has been renamed and rebranded to the Positive School Climates Department. When students, staff, and parents feel welcomed and valued in schools, there's a good chance that the school climate is a positive one. We know that caring leaders who focus on building meaningful relationships, particularly with their students, staff, and parent community, will have a better chance of engagement and success. The Positive School Climates Department will continue to be proactive in its work.
We create the optimal conditions for all students to thrive and reach their potential when our students feel welcomed and included, when staff base their practices upon that understanding, and when schools strive to foster and maintain collaborative partnerships with home and community. Learning and life experiences for our individual students are in constant shift during the pandemic. Inclusive Student Services teams continue to look at ways to promote access and remove barriers to service, such as the use of verbal consents for referrals, continuation of the Connect to Your Mental Health button on the DDSB website, and staff assignment shifts concurrent to our student transitions are all strategies that have helped ensure timely and equitable access to service. Most recently, a short video titled "We Are Your Mental Health Team" was created as part of our year-long mental health and well-being campaign. This public service announcement style video highlights members of the psychological services and social work teams with invite to reach out, connect, and access their support. We recognize that mental health supports are so very important for everyone's well-being. Supports for DDSB staff include recent release of a pre-recorded wellness session titled "Overcoming Burnout." This resource is the first in a planned series of 4 all-staff supports. A cross-departmental working team is creating a plan for the rollout of the Mental Fitness Index tool. Information gathered through this tool will be used to deepen our understanding of staff needs as we continue to build supports. Our mental health and well-being matters, and it's important to create safe, welcoming, and inclusive environments where these conversations can happen safely.
Within our leadership priority, we have made real strides in our commitment to attracting and developing leaders at all levels of the organization. In particular, we've registered 125 candidates for the Aspiring Leaders Program. In the fall promotion process, 7 new candidates were added to the pool who demonstrated strong backgrounds in equity-based leadership and rich leadership experience that have prepared them for the next chapter in their leadership journey. We hosted an external recruitment event that was attended by 62 participants from a wide variety of background experiences with differing levels of experience and expertise. And we've onboarded 43 new to the role administrators through our DDSB networking program. We're building foundational skills for these individuals to ensure they have the equitable access to resources and professional development to support their leadership growth. Simultaneously, we're working to further develop and support our current leadership pool. Our mentoring program is active with 54 administrators connected to mentors. And finally, 114 plus vice principals participated in the December VP networking opportunity. And also we have 25 VPs currently engaged in a 5-module series to develop their skills in guiding learning conversations.
At DDSB, we value our employees and recognize the importance of supported return to work processes. A steering committee will be convened to focus on how we can continue to provide excellent customer service and reduce lost time. It is important to note that in the fall of 2020, Ability Management supported over 400 accommodations that allowed our employees to return to work, many at our DDSB at-home virtual school.
As we continue to deepen our commitment to identifying, addressing, and eliminating anti-Indigenous racism, and taking on concrete actions of reconciliation, the Land Acknowledgement is now a daily practice in all DDSB schools, and school leaders are engaging in ongoing professional learning to support meaningful delivery and ongoing learning. 12 secondary schools have expressed interest in participating in year 1 of the grade 11 English implementation plan. Preparations and professional learning are underway for fall 2021 start date.
The groundwork for systemic change to occur in any organization must begin with professional learning. Let's Do This, Preparing to Dismantle and Disrupt Anti-Black Racism Professional Learning series, led by Dr. Nicole Westburn, supports educators and staff with opportunities for knowledge building in Black Canadian history and the systemic barriers for different groups of students. To date, all coaches, program facilitators, administrators, DDSB at-home educators, both elementary and secondary, superintendents, managers, and 16 school-wide teams received anti-Black racism training. A second professional learning day for guidance counselors has been planned and scheduled. During the thought-provoking sessions, educators and staff also explore their experiences with race and racism and develop a plan of action to disrupt and dismantle oppressive structures within their sphere of influence in their unique work environments. This professional learning series is incorporated into CRRP strategies and the CRP website to inform and support educators with implementing racial equity in DDSB schools for Black, Indigenous, and other racialized populations.
As Superintendent Lazarus mentioned, the Equity Department continues to build knowledge across the system on our CRP anti-oppression strategy. We are building the ramp towards learning spaces where innovative practices, including Indigenous knowledge systems and pedagogies, along with culturally relevant and responsive practices, will help bridge gaps, eliminate existing barriers to student achievement and well-being, and enable all students to thrive. Among our current knowledge building activities, we're providing content for all family of school meetings, delivering 3 sessions for elementary occasional teachers and vice principal network on anti-oppression in collaboration with Indigenous education, NTIP, and positive school climates. And finally, delivering 6 sessions for new teachers with curriculum and NTIP facilitator on addressing anti-oppressive practice.
For the human rights policy, the first phase of the community engagement on the policy framework and the consultation plan that was presented to you back in October is completed. This included wide engagement with students, parents and caregivers, employees, board committees, and community. As outlined in the policy development framework, work is underway to draft the overarching policy, 4 related procedures, and an accountability framework to support our commitment to center human rights and equity and to provide learning and working environments that are welcoming, safe, inclusive, respectful, equitable, accessible, and free from discrimination. And in the meantime, human rights and equity principles continue to be embedded and reflected in other procedures and initiatives and throughout the operational plan.
With a focus on cultivating interdepartmental collaboration, 7 sessions supporting the redesign of System Initiative's Student Achievement Committee have taken place with guiding principles based in human rights, equity, and collaboration. The work within this committee has supported an interdepartmental approach to operationalizing system goals. We also know that parents and caregivers are essential partners in their children's education. Student well-being and achievement improves when parents play an active role in their children's education, and schools become better when parents are involved. We have continued to offer a multitude of opportunities to support parent and caregiver engagement at both the school and board level. A few of these include program evening for planning amongst municipalities. Parent Involvement Committee hosted a session with Tend Academy on overloaded strategies to stay healthy in a stressful workplace. And in the near future, we'll be hosting an upcoming parent engagement series event titled "How to Speak to Your Children About Anti-Black Racism." In addition, SEAC hosted a session, "The Edge of Compassion: Tools to Manage Caregiver Fatigue."
Clean audit opinion was provided by KPMG for the Durham District School Board for the 1920 school year, highlighting that strong internal controls were in place to allow for a pivot from staff working in person to staff working virtually. The trustee approved budget for the 2021 school year was used as the basis for starting the school year and has been added to as more information has been released. The board's revised estimate submission was presented to trustees last month based on October 31st enrollment and included all known additional revenues and expenses while managing to hold the same projected bottom line. The budget process for the 21-22 school year has begun, with a draft calendar of dates being prepared that includes opportunities for stakeholders to provide input into the upcoming budget.
Innovation is crucial to the continuing success of any organization. It's the process of translating ideas, problem solving, and thinking into new learning and a service that creates value for all students, staff, and community. Therefore, innovation is woven into the work that we do at DDSB. You will find it throughout all the operational goals. With this in mind, I would like to provide an update on two areas: innovative learning spaces and innovative tools, coherence making. Innovative learning spaces refers to the rich use of the learning spaces and environment, whether it be virtual or in person, as a teaching tool, as a part of the teaching and learning experience. All teachers were given the opportunity to learn about the rich use of spaces in various ways. One example was through on-demand learning modules that were placed on the Virtual Professional Learning Hub, providing opportunities from beginning courses on how to create a Google Classroom to consolidation courses on how to use software to support the integration of literacy and numeracy into effective programming. Another example was through office hours, provided 3 to 4 times per day, as opportunities where facilitators and coaches are available to answer on-the-spot questions that educators may have, in the moment PD, before, during, and after school hours. Innovative tools, coherence making. This comes in the form of interdepartmental planning, teaching and learning through integration, connection, and consistency. We intentionally create and enhance the conditions to collaborate in all areas and with all departments in DDSB. Innovation with equity and innovation with curriculum are a few examples of collaboration. We schedule weekly meetings and consistent connections with members from various departments to intentionally plan professional learning sessions, problem solve, and work together to provide real-time as well as on-demand learning opportunities. We also use the feedback from these departments and from our educators and from our administrators to be responsive to the PD that we give and to provide teaching and learning virtual tips to virtual and in-person staff. Please see the operational goals for more details on our action items. Thank you.
I want to thank the entire team and acknowledge we talk a lot about the work that we do throughout the district and staff throughout the district. And certainly everything here has a ripple effect. And so one of the things that the senior team continues to challenge ourselves on is integration of initiatives to ensure that we really do focus when we think about the ripple effect and district staff, focus on the most important work to make a difference for the students that we serve. I also want to acknowledge the senior team because it has been an unusual year, not only in terms of the pandemic and managing the COVID-related items that emerge on a daily basis, but also the fact that we're a relatively new team, and commend them on the way that they have come together to really look at the work from an interdisciplinary perspective and to try to merge the efforts that they put forward in terms of the board's strategic plan. So that does conclude our mid-year operational update, and we're very happy to take any questions that you may have related to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Marsh and the senior team. Wondering if there are any questions or comments from trustees. Trustee Barnes.
Thank you. I'll be brief. This was a very fulsome plan. I really liked so we got a sort of a snapshot on operations and what is going on, and I like the pieces around supporting our employees with along mental health and well-being, and the fact that we're actually doing bite-sized pieces that are actually you can just take and implement right away. So we went through a whole time of a lot of our administrators and teachers wading through initiatives and the next initiative and putting that in place and how that looks in the classroom and how that looks in schools. So I like the fact that we're moving now to giving actually workable bites that somebody can take and implement without, and then grow on those pieces. So if I don't know where to start, I have a starting point. So I like that support piece that we've moved forward to. And the idea of customer service, that we are really servicing our staff because they need it, and it's not something to be overlooked. So I like those support pieces, and I'm hoping as we go along, we're building in measurements so we can see what works and what needs to be tweaked and what needs to be looked at, and getting feedback from the things that we're doing to see what's working and what's not. So thanks to the senior staff, that report was very fulsome and it gave a lot of details and insight into the operational pieces. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Barnes. To Chair Morton. Go ahead, Chair Morton.
Thank you. I just want to say that was an excellent presentation demonstrating all the good things that we talk about, the level of cooperation, the level of collaboration, and the teamwork that was involved. Thank you very much. That was extremely well put together.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Marsh and the senior staff. Trustee Stone.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm just looking at Indigenous education. So the develop an implementation plan for mandatory grade 11 Indigenous English courses. Are we one of the first boards to do that, or was that sort of something that was mandated from the ministry?
Through you, Chair, I can certainly address that. It's not mandated by the ministry currently. However, there are a number of boards that have moved forward with mandatory grade 11 English, starting with our coterminous board, moving eastward. The majority of those boards have all begun mandatory English, and there are several others throughout the province as well. So we're not necessarily cutting edge at this time. However, we are certainly following a trend moving forward.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Elmhurst. Is there anything further? Your hand is up, Trustee
Yes, it is up. Sorry, yes,
right?
I'm just moving to the equity page, and page 17. I'm just looking at dismantle white supremacy in literature and curriculum. I just wonder if anybody can comment on what that looks like.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Happy to respond to that, Trustee Stone. Really what we're looking at is we're making sure that the curriculum that we deliver to students, literature curriculum, is curriculum that is balanced and responsive and relevant. Curriculum that honors the stories and lived experiences of all the students in our schools and provides perspectives from multiple areas, as opposed to a traditionally Eurocentric view that we've seen historically in curriculum.
Supplementary,
Trustee? Yeah, I was just when you say dismantle, that's the well, dismantling white supremacy. White supremacy is a very incendiary term nowadays, but and always, I think. But dismantle just makes me think you're going to take away from. I would like to see add to represent everyone rather than dismantling as in taking away from. That's all.
I don't want to put our human rights advisor on the spot, but we have been working with definitions in terms of some of these terms, and I wonder, I'm not sure if you would have it off the top, either Superintendent Hamid or whether or not our human rights advisor Mather would be able to just share the definition that we've been using internally, Trustee Stone, in terms of our thinking about this work, because that may just highlight it a little bit in a more concrete way for you.
I do have it ready, Director Marsh. Thank you. And through you, Chair, the notion of dismantling white supremacy, Trustee Stone, really centers around the conversation. When we look at white supremacy, what we're talking about, and I'll give you the term that we're using. When we use the term white supremacy, and this is a quote from a resource, we do not mean it in its usage to indicate extreme hate groups such as the Ku Klux Klan or groups such as that, others of that nature. We're using it really to capture the pervasiveness, magnitude, and normality of white privilege dominance and assumed superiority. So again, it's using the term not to refer to hate groups or bad racist as such. It's to capture the all-encompassing dimensions and dismantle the dimensions that create this notion of white privilege, dominance, hegemony, and assumed superiority, not only in mainstream, but in curriculum, in protagonists, in conversation, in media, and things of that nature. So really beginning to take away some of those structures that have been historically in place. Does that help answer your question, Trustee Stone?
It does help answer the question. I'm not sure it makes it any better, but I'm just saying we want allies, and I know how that term is. I'm just going to use this term. It's explosive. It's incendiary, and I'm just wondering if our board can actually come up with a better term, because people will not know what you're talking about when you talk about that. They will take it as quite a negative term and not take the definition of what you just said. You know what I mean? So you've just told us a definition that you're using, but other people will not know that you're using that definition. So when they read reports like this, or when they hear that term, it's highly explosive. So I'm just wondering if we could use a different term, or
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I think that is something definitely to take under advisement, and something for us to think about how we are messaging our use of language, but point taken, Trustee Stone.
Thank you. Trustee Lundquist?
You're muted, Nikki.
Of course I am. Sorry. I just want to offer a slightly different viewpoint on that. I think it would be good to provide some context so that people understand what is being discussed, because I'm not sure that's always clear. But I do think that we are in a period where, you know, I appreciate that Trustee Stone is calling it incendiary, but I'm calling it reality. And so to me, I think that language is actually powerful and important. And so I don't share the same view. I think that language evolves over time, and this is the current evolution of where we are. And that's not to say it needs to be stuck there, but I do agree that an explanation or greater understanding would be helpful for people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or comments, I'll be moving on to section 9B, elementary enrollment update, and calling on Acting Associate Director Jim Markowski.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Thatcher. The report can be found this evening on page 97 of your package. The purpose of the report this evening is to provide trustees with an elementary enrollment update. In August 2020, we conducted a survey of families in an effort to determine the number of students who would be returning to their in-person schools and the number of those wishing to register at DDSB home. In an effort to open our schools in a timely manner, we proceeded to staff our schools based upon these numbers. In total, we had 12,500 elementary students transferred from in-person schools to DDSB at home for school startup in the fall of 2020. We provided a second opportunity for families to indicate their registration preferences, and this second window was open between September 2nd and October 5th. The survey results from this time period indicated that approximately 3,700 additional students wish to transition to DDSB at home, and approximately 1,500 students at DDSB home wish to return back to their in-person schools. And these transitions were facilitated by the November 16th deadline that was shared. During the period of October 6th to January 11th, there was a third opportunity for students to transition between schools and for families to indicate their preferences. We'll be transitioning these requests after the Term 1 elementary report cards, which will take place during the week of February 22nd. At this point, we're anticipating an additional just over 1,200 students transitioning to DDSB at home and approximately 440 students returning to in-person schools. Our staffing needs at the elementary level were addressed in the November transition by transferring staff between schools of in-person and virtual. In order to provide stability during our February transition, we intend to introduce additional DDSB at home staff to mitigate the need for in-person schools to reorganize classrooms and transfer out staff. And we believe that this transition plans, these plans will help promote kind of the family voice that we refer to, while also facilitating a stable learning environment for our students. And that's the end of my report. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Acting Associate Director. Calling on Trustee Barnes. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank
Trustee
you.
Barnes.
We mentioned this before in regards to the stability of in-class. If we do go back to in-class, what is that going to look like based on the numbers that have switched over to the online for our schools? Are we still going to be able to maintain classes, or when we go back to school? I'm just asking.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Thatcher. Trustee Barnes, at the beginning of the board meeting, Director Marsh had talked about some recent announcement regarding federal funding. So as we're analyzing that funding and seeing where it could be allocated, we're hoping that this can help sort of mitigate the need to remove staff from schools and ultimately stabilize the transition. And I think I'm hoping that sort of addresses your question. By introducing additional staff to the virtual schools, it'll sort of significantly mitigate the need for us to reorganize in-person classrooms and also keep the student populations down in various schools as a result.
Okay, so basically we're saying we're still viable for in-class for most of our schools, depending on the funding that comes through.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Chair Thatcher. There would be no issue in terms of viability. I think some schools you're going to see a larger cohorts of students wanting to transfer, depending on the size of the schools is one factor. And we've seen certain municipalities showing more interest of families in moving over to virtual. But that all being said, as we're working through this, we don't foresee any issue in terms of viability of schools. We'll work through each school's organization. And if needed, we'll work with the individual schools to make sure that all classrooms are viable, that being done in a way that's least disruptive to learning environments.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Moving on to 9C, and calling on Associate Director Wright to present the Durham-Scarborough Bus Rapid Transit.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's my pleasure to welcome this evening Christine Nascaville and Carrie Trombino from our Facilities Planning Department to help walk us through the information this evening. I think you'll find this an interesting information report as if this project does come to fruition, there will be an impact on a number of our school communities. So Christine and Carrie, please. Thanks.
Thank you. And through you, Chair Thatcher, this report is provided this evening as information on the proposed Durham-Scarborough bus rapid transit project. If it is approved, the rapid transit buses will travel along Highway 2 for approximately 36 kilometers from Ellesmere Road in Scarborough through to downtown Oshawa with 49 stops. The project assessment is expected to be completed at the end of 2021, and it is proposed that the route will have dedicated lanes through the center of the roadway. However, through downtown Whitby, it is proposed that Highway 2 will be exclusive to transit only. All other traffic would be rerouted around the downtown core, and that rerouting of traffic will result in increased traffic flow on the arterial routes. And this could result in needing more crossing guards. It could also result in a change in the school bus stops, as well as school bus ride times. This report has been provided as information to you this evening, and we will continue to provide any future update as it becomes available. That is our report this evening, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Christine. Calling on Trustee Edwards. Trustee Edwards, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I'm just making sure I'm raising the right hand and et cetera. I'm very dismayed on what's happening around Metrolinx, and that this is a common complaint that I've heard, especially through the work that I've done through the K-12 at Standards Development Committee around accessibility, as that Metrolinx comes in and they say they're accessible, and they do things like this. And I'm going to read a quote that actually comes from Metrolinx website around accessibility. And I chuckle at this because it says, Metrolinx is committed to ensuring that its services and operations are accessible to all customers and to work with partners in the GTHA to plan, build, and operate an integrated accessible transportation system. The organization will work diligently to remove existing and avoid creating barriers to universal access, and will demonstrate leadership consulting widely and incorporating best practices to enhance accessibility in its services. So yes, it's going to consult, but it will disturb accessibility to the rest of the community. And, you know, I have a huge problem where that we're going to basically tell students with special needs that may be affected, where they have to find a stop outside the transit mall area to when they currently get access through basically from picking up right from their driveway, their front, and some cases. So I'm having a huge problem with this going through, and the consultation process has an impact to the accessibility of our students. I actually have a motion that I will look at, but I would like to hear other trustees' comments, and then I would put a motion forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Edwards. I'm going to go to Trustee Lundquist and then to Trustee Barrett.
Thank you. So I'm just going to observe that this is not it's not a done deal, is my understanding of it, that there is massive resistance, particularly to the transit mall portion of it in Whitby. Thousands of people have objected to it. There is a suggestion that much of council doesn't support it. And so I'm a little puzzled as to why it's coming before us when it's not something that is concrete at this stage. think it's largely speculative. So I'm puzzling about the reason for putting it here now, when those plans are still in, you know, I understand that there's going to be rapid transit, and I'm not disputing the need for it, but this particular plan is not concrete. So I'm puzzling as to why it's before us and what the purpose is.
Associate Director Wright, did you want to address that?
Through you, Chair Thatcher, I'm wondering if Associate Director Wright is actually frozen. So I think that the purpose of the report coming forward at this time, Trustee Lundquist, is that staff was asked to participate in the consultation. We have then analyzed the potential impact for Durham District School Board and wanted to make sure trustees were aware of the potential impact, recognizing that this isn't a done deal, but also wanting a sense of responsibility in terms of you not being caught out and not informed as far as the impact should it go through.
And that's helpful. And may I have a supplemental, please, Chair Thatcher?
Absolutely.
So I'm just trying to understand, did the school board take a position with respect to BRT, the bus rapid transit, or was it just informational?
Sorry, no, we were a listener at it, and we're now bringing information forward to you in terms of what we heard.
That's helpful. Thank you very much, Director Marsh.
Thank you. And Trustee Barrett, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair Thatcher. So I'm going to use a Stephen Covey turn. I'm going to seek first to understand and then be understood first. So I just have a couple of clarifying questions. I'm assuming that in the paragraph on page 3, that would potentially mean, to build on the potential impact, that it may alter the transportation that we provide students along that Highway 2 corridor. Is this the potential of what impact could be? Forget about, and I don't mean really forget, but just put aside the Whitby Mall, forget it, the downtown Whitby, which is already kind of a traffic mess anyway. Is that really potentially the impact, that we could actually reduce busing or change access to for students who live on that Highway 2 corridor? Is that the potential of an impact?
And through you, Chair, definitely for students with yellow school busing, there could be an impact. There potentially could be a positive impact with transit for students for high school, but definitely from staff's point of view, and the reason we're in on these meetings is to gather the information on the impact it will have with students walking to school in that downtown area, to the schools that are in that area, as well as yellow school buses that are traveling through downtown Whitby at this time. We currently have 12 buses that do travel along Highway 2 in that area. And we have also had it confirmed that they would not be considered part of the transit that would be able to use that portion of Highway 2.
Okay, now that would be absolutely ridiculous and something that should be opposed, to build on what Trustee Lundquist was talking about. The other piece then is, I'm very interested, not surprised, that when they're looking at Durham, it ends at Simcoe. So what was the rationale for ending it at Simcoe when there's a lot of city beyond Simcoe? I think we'll go all the way to Town Line the last time I checked. I'm just wondering, did they have a rationale for that?
Through you, Chair, I'm not aware of one. Carrie, so if I can, Carrie Trombino, are you aware of any rationale that they have given?
I'm not. It may be connected to the Oshawa Center area, and they're looking at focusing around urban built up areas and accessing the college and university is what I would think, but I don't know exactly why it stops there.
That might be a question for further. Again, there's still some questions I recognize, and it's not a done deal. But it just doesn't make any sense to me why you would stop any sort of transit. You know, even if they put in a light rail transit system and having it stop at Simcoe, there's a lot more to Oshawa than just ends at Simcoe because of Durham College north on Simcoe. So, but anyway, we'll see where it goes to from here. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Edwards.
I recognize that this is not a done deal. My only concern about this is that we're not on record of making a comment around it. And what I've heard, because Ajax and Pickering are actually further along in the process. And that's the common thing that we get, that I've heard is, well, nobody made any comments as such in the consultation. So there's some things that have happened in Ajax that the municipality is not happy about. They've had numerous discussions around what's happening in Ajax. So I'm just concerned that, I know it's an informational item and I appreciate staff bringing this forward. And I just feel that we should be put on record our opposition of this proposal, and the reasons why. Because otherwise, in what I have observed, and I'm not the only one, and as I said, across the way, is that Metrolinx comes through and that's what you get. So I just really would support, because this is Whitby area, I really think that we should be on record and saying these are the issues that we see on this proposal.
Thank you, Trustee Edwards. I'm not seeing any further comments or questions. So I'm going to be welcoming our student trustees.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I see two hands here. I'm not sure whether Director Marsh or Trustee Lundquist his hand came up first. Go ahead, Trustee Lundquist.
You're muted.
I know, I keep popping it and I'm having whatever, I'm sorry. So I was just going to observe that I take Trustee Edwards' point quite seriously. Metrolinx has a reputation for steamrolling ahead sometimes and perhaps not listening to the concerns of the community. So I do think that it's important that if we have concerns about the impact on our students in busing, that we should express those concerns to Metrolinx. So I took what Trustee Edwards was saying to me, at least to me, was that she wanted to bring a motion to send a letter of some kind expressing concern to Metrolinx. And I just wanted to confirm if that was right or if I'm misconstruing what Trustee Edwards was suggesting.
I was going to do that, but I didn't want to do that unless I heard concerns from the Whitby trustees, because it is their area. And I fully do support, that was what I was looking at as a motion to write the letter to Metrolinx, as well as CC it to our Cotumus board and basically the town of Whitby, to express our concerns on the proposed route, so that we're on record.
I would be happy to second that motion, Trustee Thatcher.
Thank you very much, Trustee Lundquist. So is your motion to write a letter to Metrolinx with a copy to the town of Whitby expressing our concerns around the proposed route? Is that correct, Trustee Edwards?
Yes, but I was also CC'd to our Coterminous board because they were with DS and DSTS, right?
You might have to spell that, Trustee Edwards. What is
Chair
that?
Thatcher, would it be helpful, sorry to interrupt, would it be helpful, Chair Thatcher, if Trustee Edwards, we had the Executive Officer, Sir Janik, put the motion up in writing so that everyone can see it on the screen? Does that assist?
Sure. That would be very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Director Marsh.
Thanks. Are you able to do that, Executive Officer Sir Janik, please?
Moved by trustee Edwards, seconded by trustee Lundquist.
You might also want to be able to make sure you copy the region as well, because I believe the region is dealing with it as much as the town as well.
Well, and possibly the MPP.
Yeah, I would say the MPPs, and particularly also the Minister of Seniors and Accessibility.
And also, if we're going to be asking the question on why does it stop at Simcoe, you might want to also include somebody from Oshawa in there. So maybe you just want to include all the mayoralty offices across the region.
Or possibly all of the Durham area MPPs.
Yes, I think that'd be a good idea. Oh, sorry. That sounds like a good idea.
Trustees, I understand that there are hands raised at the moment, but I'm not able to see them. So would you mind calling out?
You've got Linda Stone, Nikki, and you got Nikki and Patrice with their hands up.
So trustee Stone?
Sorry, no, I just took it down. Thank you.
All right. And that's Patrice. I'll go to Patrice and then to you, trustee Lundquist. Go ahead, trustee Barnes.
Thank you. So are we going to be getting, I'm assuming we're going to get a copy of the letter, and who is going to put forward the concerns? Is it just the planning committee, planning department? Is trustees going to input some of this information?
Trustee Edwards, any thoughts on that?
My intent is that this is coming from the Board of Trustees with the information that is provided by staff, even a copy of the report eventually, I guess. But the intent is it's coming from the board with the information that was provided by staff.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, trustee Barnes?
Yeah, sort of. So ultimately, who is writing the letter? So staff is going to write the letter. Are we as trustees going to give input of what the concerns are listed, or are we just going to get a draft and add to it if there's additional concern? I'm just trying to figure out what the process will be. I know if the Director Marsh wanted.
Director Marsh, can you clarify that? Will this be coming from the communications department?
Sure, thank you. So I believe if trustee Edwards is willing, that it's the chair writes the letter. The staff support the chair in official writing that the board asks the chair to do on their behalf. And so the letter would go forward then from the chair on behalf of the Durham District School Board of Trustees. And the typical pattern we have been following, and Chair Morton may wish to weigh in on this, but after we've worked with her in terms of the writing of the letter, she has been asking staff to send it out on her behalf, so all trustees see it as a draft prior to it actually going out.
Thank you. Trustee Morton, did you want to weigh in on that?
I would be in total agreement with what Director Marsh has indicated.
All right, thank you. If there's anyone else, Trustee Lundquist, I think we're coming to you next.
Thank you. So I'm getting a little bit squirrely because I actually think that we're misconstruing something. And I recognize that I seconded the motion because I wanted the motion about Metrolinx and their process and what's happening potentially with our students and busing on the table. But I don't think the challenge is the proposed route. I don't think that's the entirety of the challenge. So that route is coming, right? They're going down Dundas Street. There's no question about it. It's a matter of, is there a transit mall that closes Whitby to traffic that impacts our students in the downtown core as they're bused through there? So I actually think it is perhaps, you know, I mean, the route might be an issue with respect to accessibility as raised by Trustee Edwards, but I don't think generally the route is the big picture issue that, as I read the report, that is causing the concerns. I think it's actually about the closure of Dundas Street for the proposed transit mall, and expressing our concern really about the impact of that on DDSB students and busing and potentially accessibility as well.
Thank you, Trustee Lundquist. Chair Morton, do you think that you might ask trustees to send you a list of their concerns?
That's a great idea. Nikki summed up a lot of those concerns now, but I would appreciate having that in writing.
All right, let's go to Trustee Templeton.
I was actually just going to back what Nikki's saying, because a lot of the accessibility and the safety from the traffic is going to be diverted to all the streets that the kids work on as well, and which affects all the school buses and all the schools in the area. So I agree with Nikki 100% on this, and Trustee Edwards. And actually, I agree with Michael Barrett, because I don't understand the simple stop either, but it doesn't make sense. Thanks.
You're very agreeable, Trustee Templeton. Thank you. We have a motion here on the table. Are there any further comments or questions before we go to the motion?
So I'm sorry, Trustee Thatcher, I don't mean to interrupt, but I actually was trying to amend the motion because as it stands, it doesn't actually reference some of the concerns. And that just says the proposed route. And I don't know if that encompasses all of those concerns or not. So can we just add with respect to the proposed route and other concerns related to the BRT? And then that gives Trustee Morton Chair Morton lots of wiggle room to write a letter that reflects the feedback that she gets from us as you requested.
So, and other concerns related to the
Durham. Yeah, what I think that works. I can't actually see it because it's really small on my screen and I can't make it larger. Oh, thank you. Expect the press route and other concerns related to the Durham school bus route. Yeah, I think that if we do it that way, to me, it just gives us more opportunity to actually address the myriad of concerns that are not just about the route, which they'll say is just going down Dundas or Kingston Road, but it's actually about the students and the busing and safety for students walking and traffic on these other streets, and also accessibility. And I think it provides us with more opportunity to address all of the concerns that have been raised by trustees.
So Trustee Lundquist, did you suggest an amendment?
I did. So my amendment is on the screen, Trustee Thatcher. Chair Thatcher,
so,
sorry.
So can I then suggest that we have a motion moved by Trustee Edwards. We have an amended motion.
So I would be asking for a seconder on my amended motion. We would vote on that, and then we would go back to the main motion.
I'd be happy to second it.
And seconded by Trustee Edwards. Thank you. I was going to suggest that. So first, I can only see the screen here, and I cannot see anyone's hands. So if you can, please let me know. Oh, there it is. So first, let's vote on the amendment. to the motion? All in favor? Opposed? And now we'll vote on the amended motion. The motion that was up on the screen, moved by Trustee Lundquist, seconded by Trustee Edwards. All in favor of the amended motion? And opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, on the agenda, item 9D, I'd like to welcome Aaliyah, Logan, and Arpita. Could you let me know, student trustees, who will be beginning tonight?
Will be me, Logan.
Go ahead, Logan.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. During our January 18th Senate meeting, senators got the chance to sign up for a leadership role in our upcoming elementary leadership conference. We have scheduled the conference for February 24th, and it will take place virtually. The conference includes guest speakers, Senate panelists, and lots of learning opportunities. Our conference goals are to educate elementary students about Student Senate and student trustees' responsibilities, gain feedback from elementary students to bring back to the Senate, foster leadership within elementary students, and clear up any of the elementary students' questions. In our upcoming Senate meeting on February 8th, we have the pleasure of welcoming Simone Taylor and Principal McIntosh from the Equity Ad Hoc Committee. While they are there, our senators will get to share feedback on the compendium of action for Black student success.
Over the past few months, OSTA ACO's Executive Council worked towards developing its advocacy project for the term. On January 26th, we officially released our project titled The Volume of Our Voices. The project aims to allow students to share their experiences in Ontario's education system through a forum where they can address 3 of the following themes: the impact of COVID-19, cultural and racial diversity, as well as the diversity in gender identities and sexual orientation. Every student has a one-of-a-kind experience in our education system, and OSTA ACO has the privilege of hosting a platform to share these stories adequately. The hope is that this platform will be effectively used to further improve our already thriving education system.
Arpita and Logan. On January 29th, I was privileged to take part in the OBSPA Public Education Symposium. The event was full of speakers and opportunities for discussion regarding the struggles and successes faced in our classrooms. Alongside 5 members of OSTA ACO's Public Board Council, I was honored with the opportunity to engage in an hour-long discussion centering around a student's perspective of the global pandemic and the presence of racism. Through our student panel, I shared powerful input with trustees from across the province, recognizing and commending our students for their undying resilience through our trying circumstances. A huge shout out goes to all of our staff and students for demonstrating January's trait of the month, responsibility, through maintaining dedication to their education. We know that no matter how the next few months will play out, the passion embodied within DDSB will help drive all of us forward. Thank you, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments for our student trustees? Seeing none, thank you very much. Moving on the agenda, item 10, I'm going to call on Trustee Stone to deliver her report around the governance ad hoc committee meetings.
Well, the report can be seen on pages 107 to 111, and they're the minutes from the November 23rd ad hoc governance committee meeting. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Stone. Although there is no correspondence or other business tonight, so the meeting will adjourn. Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone.